Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Hey, friends. We are back and we have a very, very, very special guest today for a Turquoise Talk episode. Dear friend, mentor, leader, like just one of those amazing, wise women that you want to have in your corner. Andrea Dowding. We met when I was a leader at 31 Gifts. She was there working for corporate, and we immediately just connected, and we've stayed connected. And I'm just so excited to have her on the show. So I want to tell you a little bit about Andrea before we dive right into this interview. She is a seasoned C-suite executive and inventor of 27 U.S. patents with experience directing product line strategies and diverse teams of people. 16 years of experience as an executive coach, both internally and as an independent consultant. Her specialties are strategic coaching related to product innovation and development, corporate and volunteer board development, and succession planning, leading, developing, and coaching women executives through their professional and personal growth in corporate settings, volunteer mentoring opportunities, and board work. She is also an accomplished keynote speaker and nationally recognized workshop facilitator whose insights and life strategies were highlighted in an Indie Award-winning leadership book. She's an experienced advisor and dedicated volunteer on numerous civic and career mentoring boards. Boards experience directing global product line strategies and diverse teams of people. She's amazing, y'all. And I could have her on for probably 10 different episodes, talk about 10 different topics. But I think you're going to love the topic we talk about today and the exercise that she is going to challenge you with to prepare for the holidays, or if you're feeling stuck or you're feeling overwhelmed, this episode is for you. So get your pen and paper ready and let's do this. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. I am your host, Martine Williams. I'm also your CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer, and I'm so excited about the series that we have been focusing on this month in November, really helping you to focus on your boundaries, helping you focus on that two-letter word that none of us like to hear or say. And today I'm bringing you one of my favorite people in the whole wide world as a Turquoise Talk guest here today, Miss Andrea Dowding. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been on my list since the day I launched the podcast, before I launched the podcast. So I'm super excited that we finally get to spend some time together and for everyone to be able to hear from your wisdom. You have so much wisdom.
Martine, I am so excited to be a guest on your podcast and so excited just to have a conversation with you and all of your followers, all your mompreneurs.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Well, I know not everybody knows you like I do. So can you tell them just a little bit about you, your family, and just how you kind of got into being an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I am a mom, first and foremost, of 6 beautiful kids. My husband, David, and I have spent a lot of time raising children. We've got 6 grandkids, and now through marriage, we have 8. And really try to plan time individually with each of the kids and grandkids, as well as we do a huge family vacation. We try to do that once a year. And it's just been, it's crazy. Sometimes it's always different. You never know what each week is going to bring, but we love it. We love having a big, wonderful, wonderful family. I've also balanced, well, some days not balanced. I've also, in parallel path, have built a career right now I'm coaching, but have been in executive roles in sales, marketing, and product development, merchandising. So that's always been interesting to balance. Martine, you and I have talked about it. When you're trying to build something, or you're trying to build a department, or you're trying to build a business along with a family, it just takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of saying that 2-letter word, no.
Yeah.
And I've heard many times that the choice isn't between something good or bad. It's usually between something good or better.
Right. I love that. And you've helped me with that a lot over the years. And that's why I wanted to kind of bring you on and talk about these topics that are so important, because I know this time of year, especially, I mean, it's such a crazy time of year for business. People are usually their busiest right now in their businesses. So they're trying to like grow the business while the business is there, but they also have these, family commitments coming up with Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I feel like so many times women look back and they're like, I wish I would have, right? I wish my holiday would have looked like this, or I wish I would have done more of this and less of that. And I'm sure you've experienced that before. And I really want to help them to not have that feeling. I want them to feel good about their holidays and feel good about their businesses.
The one thing I can tell you, and I haven't done it as well some years as others, and I've even had my kids tell me what they wanted more of from me, is focusing on the task more than the relationships. Because, you're trying to put together the best dinner, you're trying to put together a great Christmas, you're trying to put together a great holiday, whatever holiday you celebrate. And it can get so easy in the midst of all of the, the time constraints to put the tasks ahead of the relationships. And there's been years I've done that. And especially with adult children, when they're not here the whole day and they've said, or college age kids that are coming home that have said, I just want to have time with you, Mom. I don't really care what we're having for dinner. That was really hard for me to give up. I mean, it was like, well, we have to have this dinner that we planned in this tradition. Now there's sometimes you're like, when you do that, there are times when like, hey, I thought we were going to have this. So you have like, wait, I missed your macaroni and cheese, Mom. And it's like, so you have to just get really clear with yourself on how you're going to show up that day and what's too much to handle. And given some years versus others, I really encourage you all, it does not need to look the same, because some years are harder than others. Yeah. I'm a cancer survivor, and the years that I was battling cancer, it couldn't look the same. And yet we had some of our richest conversations. So relationships over tasks. And that's hard. It's very task oriented, right?
Oh, yeah. I love that you said it doesn't have to be the same, because I do think we kind of get in this mindset of, well, it's the way it's always been, or that's the way my family did it. And so now I have to do the same thing. And you have to really kind of step back and really think about, okay, what do I want it to look like for my family in this year? People have asked me all this year, people have said, how are you doing? With Lucas being a senior, I'm like, well, for today, I'm okay. Tomorrow, I might be falling apart. It depends on the day, and so I love that you brought that up, because I do think that's a key point. So I always like to ask my guests about burnout, because that is something, it is an epidemic, and I see it all the time. And I know that it presents itself different, for different people in different seasons. So have you experienced burnout, number one? And if you have, how did it show up for you? Was it emotional exhaustion? Was it you just an overwhelming feeling? Can you kind of share with us how it presented, and then how did you work your way out of it?
So number one, I really appreciate you asking that question. I don't think sometimes as women, we talk about the hard stuff enough. And I think sometimes even if we love a job or we love a career, that, we think we're complaining when we talk about burnout. But the thing about burnout is it comes on slowly. And sometimes you won't realize that you're entering into burnout until you start seeing the symptoms. You stop feeling as much. You're on automatic. You're not taking care of yourself. You're not getting enough rest. And once you get to that point, you really have to pay attention to all of those symptoms of burnout. So for me, that's happened. I can say really twice in a pretty significant way in my career, and and other people saw it before I did. So the other thing is you have to be vulnerable to the people that love you the most when they're sharing that, and just take a step back and really understand, where you're putting energies that don't bring you joy, where you're putting energies that maybe aren't being productive. And you have to really pull back. I had my sister, Kathy, say to me, who was a high level executive, once you've hit that high level of burnout, it will take you a year to come fully out of it. And that's the other thing I'll say is once you've hit a significant level of burnout, you really need to prepare to give yourself some time to get back and reset. And I don't know if you found that, Martine, but it takes time.
I have for sure. And I think the misconception is, well, I can just go have a weekend with the girls and I'm going to be okay, but it didn't take you a weekend to get there, and it's not going to take you a weekend to repair, what's happened and to make some major, behavior modifications and mindset shifts and all of that. And you can't do it alone either. I love that you said you have to be willing to be vulnerable with people because it's hard to walk it alone. And I think as women, we're afraid to take that mask off and say, hey, I'm struggling in silence over here. Can someone just come help me?
I love that. And I will say, in addition to, I love that you said mindset behaviors and just some behavior modification, because you have to really then almost take a self-audit or self-assessment of what are the behaviors that are creating the most difficulty for me? And then where do I say no? And sometimes there's some subtle no's and sometimes there's some big no's.
Right.
And then you have to be willing to communicate that with the people you love the most. And then sometimes even people that you're working with. So they understand that there's different expectations of what you're able to do.
Well, and I think the cool thing about being vulnerable and being willing to share with people, and again, you don't have to share the whole story with everyone, but just by letting people know that you're going to be making some changes and probably going to have some hard conversations, it allows people to see that, okay, maybe I need to do some of the same things. It's okay to say I'm not okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. That's what one of my pastor used to say all the time. And it's so true. It's okay that you're not okay right now, but it's not okay to stay that way. So what changes can you make and be willing to share that with others so other women can have the freedom to do the same thing? Because we're so hard on ourselves.
Martine, I love that. And you also said something that I think is really important. I think you don't have to share the whole story. I think sometimes as women, we think we have to share everything. I think that there's some people that you can really trust, that especially when you're in a vulnerable position, that you decide who you want to share with. And there's others where you're saying, I'm just making some changes because, it's good for my health and it's good for my productivity or it's good for my well-being. And you can leave it at that. You don't have to share the entire story with the entire world. I love that.
It's so true. Yes, we do. And I've even had people tell me like, you're not vulnerable enough on social media, or you need to be sharing more, be open more. And I'm, for me, I don't mind being vulnerable and sharing as long as I know it's going to benefit someone.
It's helping someone.
It's helping someone else. If I'm on the other side, if I'm still in the middle of it, I'm not sharing that with everybody because that's not helpful.
It's not helpful to you when you're in that vulnerable position and you are trying to figure out your next steps. Only you can decide that, and the few closest people that love you the most. And yet when you share it on social media, then the whole world thinks they get to weigh in when they may not even know you well enough to know what's best for you.
Very true. Very true. Okay. So I know as a mom of 8, you've had to have experienced some mom guilt. And I know you've helped me over the years with this. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how have you, because I don't know. I don't see it. I'm sure you have, but I haven't seen that with you, but I'm sure you have with, 8 children. I only have 2 and I have struggled with it off and on, but tell me if you could help a mom today who's just weighted down with her guilt of trying to grow this business. And then these kids, that are trying to get her attention as well and deserve it, but how can you help her?
So I will say that, I definitely have experienced mom guilt and sometimes still do because I love what I do. And there are times when, so it definitely, it's 6 kids and then it's like, and then it's now 8 grandkids. So what I'll say is number one, and this is easy, but wherever you're at, be present, be where your feet are planted. Because if you spend most of your time at work thinking about your kids, you spend most of your time with your kids thinking about what you should be doing somewhere else, then no one's getting the best of you, including you. Other thing is I would reevaluate every year. For me, the new year wasn't January. The new year was when school started September.
Hmm.
That's when I set some goals. And then I included kids in the conversation, what was most important for them this year. Because I would guess what was most important. And many times I'd get it wrong. I will tell you there's, and also give yourself some grace. If you haven't done, if there's still some mom guilt, if you look back, there's nothing productive about the past. You cannot change the past. So give yourself some grace there, but be vulnerable in asking, I had to ask one of my girls, what repair work do I need to do? Is there any repair work? That's pretty vulnerable. And then be willing to just listen and hear how things affect them. And then keep in mind that, when kids are sharing, you want to take that very seriously. You also want to measure it and hear exactly what they need. You want to measure it with your experience and wisdom too.
That's so good. Because sometimes their expectations might be a little off.
Maybe a little.
Right? Just a little. I mean, they think we're superwomen. They do. They think we have a cape. And on some days we might, but it's not a sustainable, it's not a sustainable uniform to be wearing every day.
That's exactly right. And then if you're also not having those conversations, and they become parents, they'll think back and again, I have grown kids, so it's not unusual that, they're going to do things differently than you did. And again, then even then you can have mom guilt at this point thinking, should I have done it differently? Well, just keep in mind, you did the best you can at the time with what you had.
That's right. That's right. I was reminding a mompreneur the other day, we were talking, she has 2 littles. And they've all of a sudden just decided to wake up in the middle of the night, and they're waking her up in the middle of the night. She goes, I almost feel like I've resorted back to breastfeeding, but I'm not breastfeeding, but they wake up at like 2:00 in the morning. And she said one night, like I was just so tired, Martine. And I either gave them a really bad look, or I think I yelled probably a little too loud. And I could just see the look on their face, and they were just really devastated by it. I said, this is what I've always told myself. I don't remember much from 6 years old and younger, so I'm sure my mom said something. I'm sure my dad said something. So anytime I've messed up, I'm like, I don't really remember those years. I said, so don't worry about it. They won't remember that.
Well, I will say there is when things get really fun at the holidays, every once in a while, one of my girls will reenact a time where I was totally stressed, and they'll reenact it. I know when it's going to happen. And they go through all the hand motions. I can't take it anymore. And I hear it again. That's something that I said. Yes, when a radiator was actually exploding and and mascara was running down my face. And so they find great joy in reenacting that for me.
Yep. I'm sure. But now you can laugh about it.
I can. Yes.
Awesome. So I don't know how many years ago it was, Andrea, when you spoke at a conference and you walked us through this exercise of tolerations, but I've never forgotten it. Actually, as I was kind of purging this year, with the transition, and even you brought it up to me as I was, making that transition and kind of having this season of rest, like going through the tolerations again, you reminded me of them again. And it's just so powerful. And so I really love for you, if you don't mind taking a few minutes to kind of share, because it's helpful, especially this time of year.
Yeah, I love this. This is so early in my coaching days, in between my corporate executive roles. This is some work that I came across from Debbie Phillips, and then the gentleman that actually started kind of as a granddaddy of coaching, Thomas Leonard, calls this personal foundation work. And I think it's incredibly helpful. And I've done this myself every year. And you usually do it when you're stuck, or again, it can become part of your ritual every year before you're setting goals. Because tolerations, everyone has them. But to identify them and what you want to do with them becomes really powerful, because they're energy zappers. So as humans, we tolerate a lot. And as moms, we tolerate a lot. And so only like what you're tolerating. And a toleration can be an unmet need. It can be something we put up with. It can be someone else's behavior. It can be a crossed boundary. It could be unfinished business. It could be an annoyance. It could be a problem, but it's anything we're tolerating. And when we go through the day, you probably aren't even aware of them. And usually they're in the areas of relationships, of health, of finances, of your environment, both at home and at work. And so what the notion is you start to identify those things that you're tolerating, and it can be overwhelming. When I first did this, they said, write them till you can't think of anything else. Well, I actually was depressed because I had probably 60 things I was tolerating.
Wow.
And you're like, whoa, I can't even begin. So with people that I've shared, I've been like, start with like no more than 20 because you can get overwhelmed. But make those quadrants. What are you tolerating in relationships? What are you tolerating in your financial, in your finances? What are you tolerating in your self-care, your health? What are you tolerating in your environment? What are you tolerating in your work life? And there may be other categories, Martine, but it's anything that's this unmet need. And so I'll give you an example. When I first did this, and I was working a lot of hours, it was young in my career. We had about 3 acres we lived on. We had a front yard, rolling hill, and our yard was okay. But, there were things that needed to be done in our yard. I know this sounds silly, but it just bugged me because every time I came home from a long day at work, I'd look at our yard and I'd be like, it's just not as pretty as I want it to be. And of course, we lived next to the person whose yard was the most well-kept in the neighborhood, of course.
Right.
So I couldn't figure out, but I thought, I'm tolerating that. And what that represented to me was when I came home, I didn't want to think I had another job waiting for me. And so when I saw things that needed to be tended to, whether it was the yard or whether it was the first room I walked into, I just couldn't fully relax. So there's 4 things you do with tolerations. You either handle it yourself, you either ask someone to handle it, you pay someone to handle it, or you say, not now. It's a toleration I'm not going to handle right now. And that way you're in control of either I'm going to let it go or I'm going to take care of it in one of those 3 ways. So my poor husband, I asked him to handle it. But at the time I didn't tell him why it was bugging me. And he said he would because he didn't want anyone else to do the yard work. He liked to do it. So he didn't handle it. I asked him again. He didn't handle it. And again, he was busy.
Right.
So I made the bold move of hiring a lawn care service, which caused a lot of issues because I had to tell him that I hired a lawn care service. Before Dave comes home and someone's in the yard, and he's like, what is going on? And I said, well, I went to the next list. I paid someone to do it. And when I explained to him what it represented for me, which probably would have been great in the first place when I asked him to do it.
Right.
He understood then, and we agreed. He said, look, I want to take it back. And we had a commitment. We agreed, but that toleration was handled. Now, what was really funny was that was me driving up the driveway. I always come through the garage. So my next toleration was the garage. Because I wanted, by the time that I got fully in the house, that I fully was just relaxed. So that's like an environmental toleration. So that's what I pay special attention to in my office, because that's important to me. So I know a lot of mompreneurs, they find a little space in their house and it's like, well, I'll just work off of here. But you know what, if you're really working, you want to take yourself seriously, that may be a toleration that there's certain things I need in my office for me to feel fully productive, for me to feel like I'm a person of value. It's really interesting. There's things like your health, when you just have that pain or that ache and you're tolerating it, but you keep putting it off and putting it off, handling it, that can be disastrous.
Right.
So by understanding what you want to do with your tolerations every year, it actually, again, it's called personal foundation work. It seems a little self-indulgent to some women, but it clears space and energy for you either to set the big goal or for you to take more control over your life or for you to have more energy to be able to give to yourself or your business or your family. If that helps.
I love it. No, I love it. Like I said, I could hear it over and over again, and we're getting ready to get, to the beginning of the year or the end of the year, however you want to look at it, if you run your year January to December. So that's a great thing for someone to be able to do. And I love even thinking about doing it maybe quarterly, just to kind of checking in on those. Because I know you always were checking on me, like, how you doing on your tolerations? Did you complete it? What are you working on? And so it's one of those things we may start, like you said, it might be really difficult in the beginning to go through this exercise and to see all the things you're tolerating, but we can't impact what we're not measuring and what, we can't change. Right.
And
Right.
I'll tell you, Martine, I think in times of when you're setting some big goals or in times of change, I think doing tolerations a little bit more often becomes important. The other thing I'll share is I love that when you say not now. So I had a woman that I was working with and she had a difficult marriage. And, conventional wisdom would say with her situation, you need to do something about it.
Right.
And for her, she was really relieved when she was like, not now, because there's some other things she felt needed to come first. But she had a lot of input from people going, you need to take care of this now. And for her, that wasn't the right thing to do. So that even allows you, so sometimes when you have bigger tolerations that are connected or intertwined with a lot of other things in your life, it's okay to say, not now, and then handle some of the smaller ones. It's such an individual thing. But that was really interesting for me to watch her navigate I saw this beautiful woman about 5 years later after we had worked, and she said, I finally handled it, but it was the right time,
That's
so
awesome.
It was amazing. And she's like living an incredible life.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like when someone's looking at their list, is your recommendation to like try to knock out those smaller things first? Or is it just so individualized? It's really kind of hard to give that.
The first time that you're doing it, I would say knock the smaller things out first, because it's easier to do those things. If there's something that is, or two things, knock the smaller ones out first, or if the consequences for not handling it, like a health issue, could be really devastating, then make those appointments. Okay. Like address those things that you've been tolerating.
Right. Okay. That's awesome. I love it. Well, I hope that y'all will definitely take the time you're probably going to need to go back and listen to this episode. If you're walking or maybe you're doing the dishes or you're doing laundry, like write down the categories that Andrea shared and just kind of the process of going through that. And maybe you don't need to wait. Maybe you need to do that today. Maybe you need to do it this week in preparation for the holidays. But that's super, super helpful, Andrea. So thanks for bringing that to the audience today.
So my pleasure.
So how do you, because you, again, I know from the outside looking in, we always appear to be like all put together and always motivated. But to me, you do seem to be always motivated. And I think it's by your passion. You stay in your passions, but I'll let you answer that question. How do you stay motivated? Because I know people struggle with that too.
So I love that you brought up motivation. I always try to be my best self, but I finally, maybe it's my older years, wisdom. I know that my best self is different each year. And so, and I think when we talk about our best self, and so, I do tolerations, I do set goals, but I'm very, very purposeful about the things that bring me joy. And I'm very purposeful about the things I want to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. So I've gotten really clear with myself on what brings me joy. What do I want to learn this year? And it's interesting, for about the last 15 to 18 years, I would even pick a topic that I wanted to learn more about. And I would just dive into that topic. And if I didn't learn enough about it that year, otherwise I was just trying to learn a lot of different things, but I really wanted to become masterful around a topic. So when I start to feel burnout or when I start to feel a lack of motivation, I jump into my learning topic again. And that gives me a lot of motivation. I do know the things that bring me energy are being outside and being with children. I'm really cool about that. And so if I feel my motivation waning, then there's a good dose of trying to be with kids or, be outside and regenerate some motivation. So I think it's really important for women to know what does motivate them. Right.
And what demotivates, and make sure you have those motivators present more so than the demotivators. But I think a lot of women, and I'm sure you've experienced this, just don't take time to slow down to figure those things out. They're looking at what motivates other people or what's important to other people, or that should be important to me because it's important to her. That should motivate me because that motivates her. Do you agree? Instead of just slowing down and figuring out like, okay, what is it for me? God made me unique with unique motivators. Like, what is it for me?
I love that. I totally agree with that, Martine. It's funny. We just had Friendsgiving here on Saturday, and I just finished 2 days of strategic planning. So I actually got up at 4 a.m. to start baking. And my husband was like, I feel so bad for you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. This brings me such joy to have friends these were friends from high school.
Aww.
And their husbands in our home. And I won't tell you how long that's been, but in our home that I could prepare a meal for, that we could sit around the table and break bread together. And so I know that about myself. So I'm going, I have to get up at 4. It's like, oh my gosh, I am just so excited to be able to do this for the people that I love.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love everything about that except me doing the baking. So that would be a demotivator for me.
But right? And 2 of my friends do like to bake, so they brought some store-bought things, and that was fine too. So yeah, and I tell you, the other thing I've learned to do is manage my energy more than my time.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I manage my time, but I really manage my energy.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so tell me what you're most excited about in this season that you're in right now.
So I am excited about a lot of things, but I am coaching full-time at the executive level, doing some strategic planning and learning again. Like I'm in a high learning mode right now, and also have some flexibility to be able to spend time with the family and with friends, like Friendsgiving. And so for me, I just feel incredibly grateful for this time in my life. Like really love working from home. Yeah.
And I have seen you're spending so much time with the grandbabies and well, not babies, but the grandchildren. And I think I said you had 8 children. You have 6 children and 8 grandchildren. Sorry. I don't know why I said that, but that's still a lot of kids. That's 14 kids. And you handle it so well, and you handle it with such grace. And, it's really hard to do life alone. I think we have to be very careful about who we select to be in our village. They say it takes a village, but it takes a right village. And I'm so thankful that you're in my village and that you're my lifer. And I know I can call upon you at any time to ask the simplest of questions or the most complex. And you're just calm. There's nothing I've ever said to you there that you've gotten overexcited about, or you're just a great listener. So I just want to take that opportunity to thank you for being in my village and being my mentor and friend.
I feel the same way, Martine. You're an inspiration to a lot of women. I love that you're doing this series, that you're asking women some of the hard questions. And, we need to be asking each other those questions. And again, giving that unconditional support, and the work you're doing around motivators is phenomenal.
Thank you. Phenomenal. Thank you. I'm excited. That's what I'm excited about in the season. Okay. So if you had a chance, we'll wrap it up with this. If you had a chance to talk to all the mompreneurs, if you just had them all in one room with all the experience that you've had, what's the 1 or 2 things you would want to make sure they really understand? Because you've walked this path for so many years already. You've raised amazing children, now grandchildren. You have an amazing husband, and people just love you. So you're doing it right. You're doing it right. Not perfect, but you're doing it right. No one's perfect. I'm not saying you're perfect, but
there's a lot of things I haven't done right. But I almost cried when you asked me that question, because moms are so hard on themselves, and I really want women to not be so hard on themselves. I want you to, I really enjoy your gifts, really take that time to find what makes you, that unique strength, that unique gift that God gave you, and really amplify that and know that that's enough. Number one. And number 2, I know we said, but don't sweat the small stuff. We all do. Yeah. We sweat the small stuff way too much. And that robs us of joy. Yeah. That just robs us of a lot of joy. And the other thing is, don't second guess yourself. I think sometimes we second guess ourselves. And, typically your intuition and your prayerful insights are exactly where they need to be.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know you do a lot of reading too, and I always like to ask what my guests are reading right now. So, or what's your favorite book that you've read recently? Do you have anything that you've read recently?
Atomic Habits, because I'm trying to change some, I read that recently and I'm actually going through it again. I love that book. Just trying to make sure that I've got some systems in place that, set me up for success to do all the things I want to do.
Awesome. And one last question. Do you have a favorite quote or a favorite verse of scripture that's like kind of like a mantra or just one that you just have on repeat? Maybe even just now in the season that you're in right now?
I got a lot of scripture that I depend on, but part of it is just my daily walk. I will say I love, and this was before Brené Brown had it, as part of her book. In my dad's office, he had Teddy Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena. And I actually have had that in my office numerous times. I have his original that was hanging, and Dad's been gone for 30 years. He died a pretty young man, but it's not the critic that counts. It's the man in the arena. So I just think it goes back to when you're in the arena trying to do, what God intended you to do. It's not the critic that counts. There's so many people sitting in the stands that will tell you how it should or shouldn't go, or what you could have done better, but it's who counts is when you're in the arena. And so that's just stuck with me through all these years.
I love it. Well, we couldn't end it on a better note. I love that. I love that. I need to see, you need to send me a picture of that picture. Is it a picture on your wall that has the man in the arena?
Yeah. It's the man in the arena. Actually, it's a whole quote. So it's Teddy Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena. And I can pull it up, but it's not the critic that counts. And Brené Brown has built her whole series on that.
Yes.
Dad had that in his office on Indianola Avenue for years.
Awesome. So, yeah. Well, I don't even think I knew that's where Brené got it from. So I learned something new today. Lots of new things today. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. This was so much fun. And we'll, put any links or anything, that Andrea talked about, books she talked about, references, or any links to connect to Andrea. We'll put those in the show notes. And I know that people will continue to come back to this episode. I for sure will be coming back to this episode. And thank you for the work you do in my life and the work you do in everyone that comes into contact with you. You're an amazing person. And I'm so thankful for you.
Martine. Yeah, you are wonderful. Thanks, Martine. Love you dearly.
All right, friends. Well, we will catch you on the next episode, and I'll talk to you then. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link. Share this episode or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.